From the world headquarters of Fox News, it's The Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
Well, new reaction tonight to nationwide teacher protests. The most politically powerful teachers union in the country, joining nearly a dozen other organized labor groups, staging rallies in 60 cities, from San Francisco to Chicago to Newark, New Jersey. Trace Gallagher has the story live from our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
And Megyn, in its newest campaign, the American Federation of Teachers now says that public education is, one, under attack, and two, it's underfunded. But look at this. The United States ranks number 5 in the world in per student spending, and yet we rank 19th in math, science, and reading. Now, during the National Day of Action you talked about, teachers from across the country came out to reclaim public education. Some of those oppose these Common Core standards being adopted in many states across the country. The American Federation of Teachers supports Common Core as a way to level the playing field for kids of all income, but also cautions it is not a silver bullet. Now, critics say the real problem is the unions. They claim unions protect teachers at the expense of students. The Center for Union Facts took out a full-page ad in the New York Times attacking AFT President Randi Weingarten, saying, and I'm quoting here, "The teachers union continues to protect incompetent teachers and refuses to reward outstanding teachers with merit-based pay. The fact is the unions have seen better days. The National Education Association is losing members. The American Federation of Teachers is holding its members but losing revenue." This debate over union effectiveness has been going on for the better part of a half century. But consider this. After World War II, in high school graduation rates, the United States was number 1. And today, the United States is number 22 as the debate goes on. Megyn.
All right, Trace, thank you. Joining us now, the woman in the New York Times advertisement that Trace just mentioned, Randi Weingarten, who's president of the American Federation of Teachers. Randi, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So
it's great to be with you.
Let's start with that critique, because the critics of the union say it's unions that are the problem, that it's in particular tenure for these teachers and the inability to fire the bad ones are contributing to these, disturbing numbers that Trace just outlined. Your thoughts?
Well, it's so disappointing that Richard Berman would put an ad like that in today after the biggest actions of, frankly, parents, students, and teachers all across America. But let me just say this. Number one, if somebody shouldn't teach, if somebody can't teach, they shouldn't be there. And frankly, our union, as well as others, in fact, the Daily News basically said that the ad was wrong. We have actually been trying to figure out how to make sure you have great teachers in every single school. Number two, where the ad and, frankly, all the stuff about PISA is so wrong, is that the countries that outcompete us actually have lots of unionization. Actually, they value their teachers. And the issue that they have is, how do you give the teachers the tools and the time that they need to do a great job? Because what happens in those countries, the big difference between 50 years ago is now, is poverty. And what we're seeing,
but we outspend them. We outspend them, 4-to-1 in most cases. And then I know you were also complaining about standardized tests, but they also use those big time in some of these countries. Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, all of whom bested us. They heavily rely on testing.
Actually, they don't. Actually,
according to the Wall Street Journal,
they do. Most of those countries actually have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 standardized tests for kids for their entire careers. What they rely on is great teachers, parental involvement, real engaging curriculum, which is one of the reasons that we are very much into the Common Core. But this is what we see. In the United States of America, if you actually factored out poverty and looked at the schools with less than 20% poverty, we outflank everybody. What we need to do is actually level the playing field for poor kids. And that's what countries like Vietnam and Estonia and Latvia have done.
What does that mean?
And that's what we should do as well.
What does that mean? What do you actually want?
What we want is we want to make sure you have project-based instruction for kids, which is what I had when I was growing up.
What does that mean?
What I did with my kids. Say again?
What does project-based instruction mean?
Meaning, like, if you have a robotics course, if kids are actually making robotics, look at the IBM P-Tech school in New York that the president has just been to. The Performance Consortium schools where kids actually do a dissertation-like study for the year where they're really
All right, so it's
engaged
a
in
different
critical thinking.
It's a different approach. Let me ask you one other question before I let you go.
But let me just also say, you have to have early kindergarten. You have to have wraparound services. You have to level the playing field for poor kids.
Okay. Here's my other question. Because the unions have taken a lot of flack for standing up for some bad teachers. And, you know, the unions say it's due process, it's due process. But in one of the cases cited by Politico, for example, this is just one of many, is the case of this one guy, hold on a second, I'll get his name, Mark Burned, he's a veteran teacher who pleaded guilty to lewd acts with his students, but the district out in L.A. paid him $40 grand to resign. They paid him $40,000 to get rid of him so they wouldn't have to deal with the administrative process. A guy who pleaded guilty to molesting kids. That's the kind of story that makes people say, oh, the union.
Right. No, I totally, look, when we were in New York City, we made sure that we had the strictest rules about that stuff. There should never be anyone guilty of sexual misconduct teaching our kids.
Or who gets $1 of school, i.e. taxpayer money.
I don't disagree with you. But the bottom line is, we got to keep the great teachers. We got to make sure we value teachers.
I mean, that's
like
true. We got to
schools.
keep the great ones, but we got to boot the bad ones. Randy, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. We'll continue this another time.